Mr. Davis, would you like to do the pledge?
Yes, I would.
Tim, would you mind doing the invocation?
I would. Before I do the invocation, I'd like to do a moment of silence for Chief Brooks, who just passed away this last week. Dear Lord, please bless us all tonight and to give us the guidance and the strength to be responsible with the taxpayers' money and to guide us in providing insight to the Board of Supervisors on the upcoming budget. Amen.
Thank you. I do believe we have a quorum. And Tim, thanks for putting together these minutes. Has everyone on the committee had an opportunity to review the meeting minutes?
Yes, sir.
Is there anything that, any edits or things that we need to change or amend?
While you're working on it, Mr. Chair, we do have quorum, just so you're aware, for determination.
Thank you. Saw all the people up here and just kind of went forward.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion. We move to approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second it.
All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes to approve minutes. And we're going to move forward with new business. We have
It's not on the agenda, but I believe we have people that want to speak to us.
other than the presentation from Major Carter Wells and
I would certainly ask. We voted to allow them to speak.
and Mayor, and I'm not opposed to it. Not opposed to it at all. I just know we've had others before us come and present, and we didn't. I don't know if we actually had it. Presentation.
Public speakers, which we voted to include at this meeting, that's not on our agenda. I was the only one that voted against it. It was several meetings ago. In fact, I believe it was on the last agenda.
Are you speaking of just anybody coming in and speaking, or the ones that we?
Citizen comments.
I'd have to go back and look. I don't remember voting on something like that.
We haven't. We never voted.
Yes, we have, Mr. Davis. I correct you, and I'll go back in the minutes and find it. I am the only one that voted against it. Passed 6-1.
Can go back and try to review.
Yeah, please, because I don't remember this either.
A couple meetings back, 2 or 3.
Is there someone today that wants to speak?
No?
Is
Or
there
it may not-
is there anyone from the community that would like to speak today, other than the designated people we have on the agenda?
Just a point of order. First of all, if we did approve this a couple of months ago, and I like my colleagues, other than Ms. Dennis, I don't remember it either. But if we did, why weren't we announced in the last few minutes then, meetings then? Why wasn't that on the agenda as a, because if we did, it should be an agenda item.
It was on the agenda, either last meeting or the meeting before, even though we had no one speak.
Is it possible we're blurring, and I'm not saying you're wrong, I don't remember it either. I do remember having a discussion on having department heads and things, if we had questions coming, it was different from that discussion?
I'll find it. I mean, it seems like it's a moot point anyway, since it doesn't seem like anyone wants to speak to us.
Okay, yeah, but we definitely want to get some clarification to that. And so that had to, just for clarification, that would have to have been before the holidays, before because we didn't have a meeting in December. Okay, thank you. No, if it's something that's in the minutes, and that we talked about and voted on, we definitely want to make sure that we're abiding by that, so. And I apologize for having a foggy memory on that one. But nevertheless, just moving forward, we do have a presentation, or two presentations today, one from Major Carter Wells and one from Chief Jay Cullen. And if they would like to, and first of all, thank you for taking time out of your day to speak to us. And however you all would like to present this information, if you want to go into great detail or hit bullet points, I know this is something that you all have presented on before, so we want to be respectful of your time.
We'll present together and just kind of go through the the presentation that we provided to the Board of Supervisors before. Really just some brief information, and really look forward to being here essentially as a resource to you to answer any questions that you may have regarding our current situations, as well as what we are or have proposed moving forward with. So before we get started, let me just open this with a caveat of this is something that we're coming forward with, or came forward with to the board. Actually, it started in some discussions with the Public Safety Committee, probably mid-year last year, about some different compensation concerns that we had, as well as employee turnover and some other things of that nature. And while it's being presented as a public safety compensation plan, we're strictly coming at you from a public safety standpoint on this. Does not mean that it could not be for essentially the entire county or select departments, but we, as your county's public safety departments, are only presenting from our standpoint of that. So it is a significant issue. That's why we felt it important to bring up. Major Wells.
Spotsylvania Sheriff's Office recruitment and retention challenges. In 2018, there are currently 14 vacancy positions, 6 of which are accepted as I'm sorry, mine got cut off. 6 of which are accepted positions outside of the county. New hires require 12 to 18 months before a deputy is released. And at 12 to 18 months, so I can kind of go through it. 12 to 18 months is some of the time that we start recruiting till the time we actually put the deputy on the road. So you have anywhere from a 30 to 90-day recruitment period. Then you have possibly a month delay waiting for the academy to start. The academy is 22 weeks, and then you have about 3 months of field training. So it's a range because it depends on when they're hired and how long it took.
Excuse me, I have a question. This academy, is that for all new hires or just the inexperienced ones?
That the academy is for non-certified deputies.
Thank you.
Yes, that's DCJ, Department of Criminal Justice, certified. And during that process, the cost of training is approximately $75,000 for everything I just explained. The academy, the salary for the new hire, and the trainer. Recruitment numbers are 208 applicants in the last 2 recruitment drives, and 6 were hired. Pay for experience will help in the retention and recruitment regarding our neighbors to the north. Experienced deputies can handle a call in 1/2 the time of that a new deputy can. Experienced deputies know in detail the geography of the county. Experienced deputies fill the need for specialty teams. And those teams include SWAT, they include search and rescue, dive team, drone team, and numerous other specialties. These issues significantly affect the operational needs of the Sheriff's Office and adversely influence the ability to serve our community.
While the Sheriff's Office's primary issues are with recruitment, and they also deal with retention issues, we're, as I said before, we're kind of dealing with both sides of the coin. Fire and rescue's challenges usually stem more regarding retention. We have a decent, I would say, effort at recruitment. We have a fair number of applications coming each time that we open an application period. We would like to see it increase, of course, because if we see it increase, it allows us to have a greater spectrum of people to pull from, potentially those with prior training. Presently, we have been hiring over the past 2 academies. Really, we got rid of all of the prerequisite training because we were not getting enough applicants with prior training and experience, which made us extend that academy beyond, really it was about a 3-month academy previously, and now it's a full 6-month academy. So that gets everyone training up to the point that they can be useful in some fashion when they're in a fire station. So they are, when they come out of the academy after 6 months, they can essentially ride in a position in the back seat, if you will, of a fire engine, and they can also drive an ambulance. So while they have a useful purpose and they are allow us to meet our minimum staffing requirements, that is still really that base level of operational employee that we have in the field. So when you look at some of the numbers I have on that slide, you know, we look at the cost of training that person. It's really that 6 months that I've got here on the screen of a little under $27,000, and that's a combination of the training that goes on in the academy as well as their salary for that 6 months. Again, that is a base level employee that provides some functionality. That doesn't mean they can drive and operate a fire engine. There's all kinds of skills they can't perform. They're at a basic life support level. They've not been able to take the advanced life support training at that point, and have not conducted a lot of the field training that's there as well. So when you really start looking at the point where we're trying to get someone that's a fully functional, multifaceted firefighter that we're looking to achieve in our workforce, that really takes a couple years. So when we have those people going out of our system, it really adds up to more than millions of dollars. You can see on the screen over the past 3 years, we've really stayed around a 10% turnover rate, about 20 positions each year. That is significant for us. We conduct our own training because it's not readily available otherwise. We have to essentially pull from our training staff that may be focusing on incumbent employees, developing people into drivers, officers, and so forth, and we have to have them focus almost completely, it seems at times, on entry-level training. So as we try to continue to build depth in our department, we're having people continue to go out, and we're not able to build that depth because we have a handful of people that have been in the department for years, which is great because there is such a wealth of knowledge there, and we have a lot of people coming in on the very young side of it. And the fire service is very much a trade-based profession. You don't hear those two mentioned in the same sentence very often, but it is very much a trade-based profession where there is a lot of on-the-job training, knowledge, skills that are passed down from those that have been in the field for longer, and you know, whether it's people in the stations training people to drive and operate apparatus, training people about the hazards, the target hazards that we have in our community, where the water supplies are, whether it be hydrants or rural water supplies, where we actually have to find a location that we can suitably pull an engine and draft water out of a pond or a lake. Those are kind of things that continue to be passed along and passed down in the station. So one of the things that we looked at with the current compensation program is it really does not provide a mechanism to move people through their pay grades and to recognize the value of every single year of employment. Because every year that we have a firefighter, even if they don't progress to an officer's rank, they become that field training officer. They're that driver. They add value for every year, the amount of experience they have in the department, and then they pass that along to those that come after them. So that's one of the things that we're really looking to fix, so that we can continue to build that depth as the department has grown rapidly over the past several years. But losing those people in the middle right there has caused significant issues for us as we continue to try to train people.
Excuse me, Chief, what's the entrance level salary? Can you tell us that? Approximate, I know it depends on.
It's about $40,000 to $41,000.
Thank you.
Really, I mean, everything I talked about is in the slide below there as far as the added value for every year of experience in our department. I will say that we use our firefighters, we use our officers to train each other in stations, and going without that kind of middle range causes us to lose out significantly and does not let us progress as we would like to. Overall, the public safety compensation proposal, again, this can be a countywide proposal if it's the board's wishes. We're just bringing this up from a public safety concern. So it ultimately provides that mechanism that we've been lacking. The Evergreen study did a pretty decent job of identifying what the pay grades, the scales should be. I think they provide a pretty competitive amount as you look at the grades themselves. But what it lacks is that capability to really move someone from that starting salary through midpoint and to the top of their scale eventually. It also, our county policies also create a barrier for us in trying to hire people that may have, if I was able to get someone with 10 or 15 years of experience as a firefighter medic in another system where they can bring that experience to the county and add to it, I really don't have that capability because of the way our system is set up. The county policies and procedures currently only allow for really 10% variation on our part. Beyond that, I have to go to the county administrator and so forth. But on the flip side of that, if I had someone, if we opened up an application process tomorrow, I had someone come in with 20 years of experience, how could I put them in a position that they're being paid much more than some of our current incumbent employees that have been here for just that long, but they haven't really moved through their pay grades? So there's a problem that we need to fix internally first that will then let us fix a problem of bringing in people from the outside. The program is essentially a step increment program, very similar to what you see in the federal government, the military, as well as several of the organizations and jurisdictions that we compete with for employees. It does allow for a uniform placement within the pay grades based upon experience and performance. The program that we put forth, working with the Sheriff's Office and Fire and Rescue, it not simply provide you a pay increase for getting through another year of employment. It requires high levels of performance. Our performance evaluations that we have every year usually looks at about an average of a 2 to be acceptable. What we're proposing is that every category within that needs to be at least a 2. to move forward with that pay increase, which means that someone is meeting the requirements of the job across all categories of that performance. It eliminates the issues that we've seen with pay compression and leapfrogging. For years, we have provided compensation increases based upon percentages, whether it's the cost of living increases, whether it's a merit increase, whether it's moving from grade to grade. It's all been based off of percentages. Well, those percentages compound. And what that does is adds additional money to some people, where some people were lacking out on that depending upon the time they were actually promoted or received that increase. One of the other challenges, and I can see Mr. Briner up there shaking his head, is we have a problem with one of our compensation policies that says that from grade to grade there is a 5% increase. But if we promote someone and that promotion equals 4 grades, someone can help me with the math on that. What percentage is that? 20%, right? Well, our policy says we can only increase up to 10%. So it creates pay disparities in there based upon the timing of when people are promoted, what the grades were, where they've served before. So it causes a lot of problems there. This program that we're recommending essentially creates a compensation matrix that lists the positions for each department, the grades that they are in, and then across the top lists the years of satisfactory and high-level performance. So that if you are a lieutenant with 10 years of satisfactory performance, which means getting a 2 in every category, nothing falling below a 2, then you look straight down the line, and everyone that's a 10-year lieutenant with that job performance is making the same amount. Where currently we have a wide variety of people in the same ranks and the same times of service. The Evergreen study really looked at time and grade versus time in the entire organization. And one of the things that we're saying about our organizations, our departments, is every year of experience in there, no matter the rank, there's added value that we need to be rewarding.
Mrs. Dennis would like to ask a question if possible.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you both for coming tonight. This is something that I followed when you presented it to the Board of Supervisors. When I brought it up to my fellow committee members here, they couldn't believe that, we couldn't give years of experience. It's a matter of life and death, not just to the members of your departments, but to we, the citizens. And I wholeheartedly am going to encourage this to be implemented this year. And then, the county can look at it also. There is a critical shortage, and part of which is you guys have your hands tied behind your backs, in trying to hire. So, Chief, I would like to ask you, so you have approximately 200 firefighter EMTs?
It's around 230 currently.
Okay, what was the worst this year? How many were you down?
We were short a time period of including some staff movements that essentially were the same as eliminating 6 positions so that we could provide some additional ALS coverage throughout the county. That equaled 6 positions, and we had, since we started that program, we had 16 people leave the department. So we were operating about 22 people down.
Major Wells, what are your current vacancies, and what was the worst this year for the Sheriff's Department?
We're currently 18 down right now. That's an increase, I think, of about 4 from what it was a couple months ago. 4 in the last 45 days, plus or minus. And within the next 90 days, I know 4 are retiring. So We actually are going through recruitment right now, but, and it's probably one of the best groups we've seen in a couple of years, which is a positive side. And a couple things I'll make a point of when you ask. Police officers, and I know firemen too, I can speak for police officers, but I'm reasonably sure, we don't get in this for the money. I mean, it's just not for the money, but I think everybody deserves a fair wage.
A fair wage, absolutely.
I'm hoping that this group that we've got now, we can get 8 or 10 out of. But again, we've lost 3 or 4 in the last 45 days, plus or minus, and we're getting ready to lose 4.
So would these be 18 road deputies you're down?
Well, there's some are SROs, but they're all in patrol. I mean, when you say road deputies
I
include
mean,
patrol.
I don't consider SROs in patrol.
Okay.
So that's what I mean, the guys
Well,
who
we're
are
getting
out.
ready to lose two SROs for retirement, and we're getting ready. But the 18 deputies are in patrol. There's probably 4 or 5 of those 18 that are SROs. I think that's the best way to answer you.
And isn't there also an SRO school? So theoretically, if you have to replace an SRO with a brand-new guy or girl, woman or man, then you have to send them not only to that academy.
I won't say never, but seldom, if ever, would we have a new recruit be an SRO.
Okay.
But an SRO school and DARE school, I think is a 3-week school. It's a 2 and a 1. So that's usually somebody that's already been in the system and been on patrol and gone through a lot of other training before they're going to be an SRO.
And
That's
are
just for the
any
safety
of these
everybody.
vacancies, do they impact any of the specialty teams?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely they do, because I think
Like SWAT or K-9?
We're down on SWAT. We're not down on K-9 right now, but we're down on SWAT, 2 or 3 members. We're down on the search and rescue, a few members. So yes, I mean, we just don't have enough people to spread around. We don't allow deputies to be on every specialty team because it takes too much away in training to be on every team. You'd never be on the road. So they're only allowed, depending on what team it is, but they're only allowed to be on usually 2 at the max.
Well, I checked on the Spotsylvania County website today under Human Resources and Job Listings, and I noticed there's just one salary. There's no salary range, but I did notice on some of the county openings, there's a salary range. I mean, on the regular government, but I just, thank you all for all you do and your men and women that work for you. And Chief Cullinan, I want that second ambulance staffed at 6, please. I'm not going to let you forget that.
If we can get enough people through the recruit academy,
Okay.
We will. Right now, and speaking of that, the slide that you saw said that we had 5 resignations already in 2019. It's actually up to 7 now. Our academy is significant. It's hard work, and sometimes after getting into it, people realize that maybe that's not the job that they want to do for the next 25, 30 plus years. So we're hoping that the 25 people that we have in that academy will be successful and will come through there, and will hopefully by the end of July help out with staffing challenges that we have in the field right now.
Mr. Chair, if I may ask the chief a question?
Yes.
Have you, switch up a little bit, go in a different direction, have you come to any conclusion about what this solar facility is going to do to your proposed budget as far as needing another fire station or more employees to deal with this? Have you come to any conclusion?
We have looked at the Shady Grove area even prior to any discussion about the solar facility. We realize that as an area of the county that has a significant lack of resources. Quite honestly, I can have a fire engine sitting on the front ramp of the fire station running with people sitting in it when the call actually comes through, and it could take us potentially 15 minutes to get to some of those areas. So we had identified that area as an area that needed a station in the future. If the facility is built, that may require that to be built sooner rather than later. And with any station, really a minimum staffing complement to make sure that we staff a fire engine and an ambulance every day is 18 people. So that's about $1.1 million for that station. So we'll have to see what ends up occurring with the approval of that and the timelines. As of right now, because there's no guarantee it will or will not happen, it is not currently in the budget, but that's something that we may need to consider in the very near future.
Thank you. Is there anything else that you all would like to add? I know we kind of jumped in with some questions and for more of a just informal discussion.
I would just say that I think both the Sheriff's Office and Fire and Rescue do, I don't toot our own horn, but I think we do an excellent job of training and preparing responders. So I think we're doing really the best that we could right now, and making sure that the county is provided with the services that they deserve and that it takes. The challenge with that is there's a lot of other jurisdictions in the state that realize the value of our employees. And let's say that most of the employees that we lose, they're not necessarily looking to go somewhere else. A lot of times they receive targeted recruitment information. So while I would not go, this is an example right here of a flyer I got in the mail because I'm a paramedic, and a lot of these departments send recruiting flyers out to the list of Virginia certified paramedics, and it's touting the amount of increased pay that they will get based upon experience, and that's what we can't compete with. That's what we need to be able to build into our system so that we can then aim to recruit those people, aim to retain the people that we currently have. But really, I mean, if we were able to get enough applicants that had enough prior training and experience, there's a potential that we could, at least for a portion of those people, put them through an abbreviated school, which would ultimately save the county money in the long run and be able to put people on the street a whole lot faster. So, did want to add that.
And if I might piggyback on that, if you don't mind. If we hire somebody from another area that have 5 years experience, in 60 to 90 days, they are up and running. And they've got the 5 years experience that I was talking about that they could finish. So, you know, in 60 to 90 days, you're saving $75,000 in replacing, you know, comparing the two. And also to reiterate what the chief said, we're speaking on behalf of public safety, and because that's what we know, and that's what we are here for. And as far as countywide, that's entirely up to the board and you gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen that could recommend it. And also, in talking to this, and I've talked to a couple other people in the board, it's a fluid plan. It's something that we've come up with, and we're open to any suggestions, whether it's a partial, instituting it partially or moving it forward, but anything in the right direction. And I've had a couple of deputies say, if I knew that in a year I was going to get a $1,500 raise, and then I could see it in the future, then I'm not going to look. But if I know in the next 5 years I'm not getting a raise, I'm going to look. And to that I do understand. You know, knowing what you have the potential of getting, not what you're going to get. It's the potential, as long as you have a good track record.
And absolutely, there is a upfront cost to this.
Yeah, well, I will, I was going to ask the same question, but go ahead.
That was going to be my question. What is the cost of fixing the compression and everything in the salary scales? Because I know the schools, it was too much. What is it for you all?
The preliminary numbers that we've run, we've done this internally, so it definitely still needs to be looked at and verified by finance. It's approximately 1.5 million for fire and rescue and 1.3 million for the sheriff's office. So it's approximately 2.8 million for public safety. Beyond that, as far as maintaining that, as far as the step increments, it's approximately 300,000 per department each year following.
And Chief, that 300,000 is just for the steps. That doesn't include if there's any
Any
type of
cost of
CPI
living,
adjustment
right,
that's
exactly.
instituted or crossed.
Exactly.
Because obviously, every year or so, if the county does a CPI adjustment, it would be assumed that CPI increase would shift that pay
would
structure.
maintain the scale.
So, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that, sir. Thank you.
Well, I was in the federal government before I became a teacher, and I'm very familiar with the step system, and I'm very familiar with the step system in teachers and losing your step. But sometimes we wouldn't get the full CPI. We get the step plus something. The other question that I would like you gentlemen to look into, or maybe finance could, is you have people that are here with 15 years of experience that really like being a deputy. They don't want to be or a firefighter. They don't want to be a sergeant. They don't want to, I'm under the impression that you have to become an officer in order to progress or move up in rank. Is that correct? Move up in rank, like
You mean move up in pay?
to move up in pay.
Okay.
And you don't even pay. Do you pay your master deputies any more than a regular deputy?
We do have a career ladder that does provide some promotion before getting into an officer's rank. So that there is a little bit of increase there.
Okay.
Now, about 3 years ago, I think Mr. Bryan remembers that we were looking at master deputy program, but then the Evergreen study started, and then as soon as that was over, this we were involved with, so that kind of took a back seat because I think these are better plans than targeting master deputies. Because these do take into account the number of years of service you have.
Okay. But you do have employees. Two of mine are my good friends, and one of them rides a horse for you. And they came here with multiple years of experience.
Absolutely.
And they should move up, if this goes through. So I'm not sure if you're figuring that in the original startup cost or not.
That was not figured in. Right now, I was just looking at how
Okay,
long someone had been.
right, and I know you told me you get very few people that have any experience. So it's not going to be maybe a fact, but like First Sergeant Boyd, who's been patrol deputy the whole time. That's what he likes. I mean, we don't want you to take your good deputies off the road or your good firefighters. But thank you all of you for what you do. And yes, I know as a teacher I wasn't supposed to get into it for the money, but I did need to make a living.
That's my point. Yes, ma'am.
So,
Thank you.
I just want to remind the committee that, and I know it wasn't intentionally, but if we can refuse from using deputies' names or any career county or school officials, yeah. Are there any other questions? Because I do have one question, but I'll defer to you.
Well, I'll be quick. I don't really have a question. I just have a comment. I listened to, thank you both for being here. I listened to you. You were dead on. But I would argue that cost of the compression could be offset by retaining people. I mean, I think there's a savings in there as well that we can't put a number on. And I don't even know the best financial person could, because we can't prove it. But it's a clear common sense approach that we would save in some way as well. So that number is probably going to be slightly less, but it's certainly worth it. This county, the size of the budget we have, there's certainly something I think I would advocate for. But what helped for me is I have something to go back to my supervisor that I'm here representing and discuss, and hope that we can push to support this for you all.
Thank you.
if I can interject one more thing.
No, go ahead. Feel free.
I want to make sure this is clear. We've talked about this coming from public safety multiple times. It was very evident in discussions that we've had with whether it's finance or HR prior to this, as well as what occurred in discussions at Public Safety Committee meetings and the Board of Supervisors meeting, that there are probably other departments in this county that are experiencing the same challenges. On direction from the county administrator, I have started working on the compensation plan to try to make it work essentially in a format that would work for the entire county. There are differences in the way that the steps would be administered. Based upon a public safety retirement, it is 25 years, where a general government retiree is usually 30 years. So that's kind of how those pay ranges would be divided.
So one of the questions that I have is, you had spoke about the average turnover rate, and this may not be something that you, information that you have, but the localities with the compensation plan that's already implemented, have you seen that their turnover rate is lower than localities or Spotsylvania that doesn't have one?
Their turnover rates, and I've talked to several of the chiefs in those areas, their turnover rates, yes, they lose some people to either other careers and sometimes between departments. And that's the nature of the competitive free market is sometimes if someone offers more money, they'll go. What we try to do is make sure that we create an environment where people really enjoy working here, and then we try to make sure that we pay them enough to keep them from looking. But those departments that have that, really, most of them have been kind of in existence longer than we have, so their turnover rates are pretty skewed with a lot of retirements. We tend to lose people a lot more at a younger age than carrying through to retirement. We're just experiencing our first rounds of retirement of people that have been here now for quite a while. They were hired in the 80s and early 90s.
Okay.
So that number is skewed. We have probably more people that leave earlier on in their career.
Okay.
And to follow up on that, the departments that have hired from us, that have offered higher wages because of their experience, have in fact, based on that very reason, have a system similar to this intact. That's why they can offer.
Makes sense.
And then on top of which now that person that's going there says, well, I'm going there and I'm getting a $5,000 raise, and I know I'm going to get $1,000 a year or $2,000 every 2 years, however it works out from here on. But they have the ability to hire them because they have 10 years experience or 8 years experience, and they're getting a $2,000 a year raise or $1,000 a year raise or somewhere in that neighborhood. So yes, they already have that in existence.
When we first made this presentation, the sheriff made a very, very good point, is that we bring people in, I think we bring people in that are happy to work for our departments. Usually they're much younger. And so they're fine usually when they're single, small family, but as soon as they start having children and they're thinking long term, they really start thinking, well, I don't have any kind of guaranteed pathway through this pay range. How am I going to pay for, Jimmy or Susie when they get to college age?
Yeah, you're thinking about the future.
And we have a very small percentage that we lose to something other than law enforcement. It is very small. So they're going elsewhere to stay in the same.
So they're really seeing,
It's money.
the county as getting the experience and being a stepping stone
Yes.
into their career, but with another locality.
Right.
I think Ms. Dennis had another question.
There was just one more thing that I want to add that I think we always need to take into consideration are benefits. I think the county benefits are excellent. I think the school benefits are excellent. So when you get these people that are, looking to the north, they really need to consider the benefits additionally. Cost of health insurance, what they're getting in health insurance, whether they could bring a car home if they live here. I mean, there are you know, quite a few. And one other thing, you don't give credit, and I did see this somewhere else where they do give credit, education credit. You don't give anything else if one of your men or women have gone down to VCU and gotten a criminal justice degree or a fire science degree, or they have a master's degree. And it's just something that, you know, even a little bit of a stipend, even a little bit, would mean something.
And to that, about every 2 years, the sheriff and Major Skibo and I try to go to squad changes and do a quick overview of your salary is here, but you can add $15,000 to $20,000 more to your salary. And I know a lot of young deputies say, I want my money, because that's what they want. But then in 15 years, it's like, well, I wished I had a retirement. And there's no question that I truly, and that's why we go, I truly believe Spotsylvania has some of the best benefit programs there are. That is 100% true. But some neighbors to the north are very similar to it. But like I say, we try our best to go in to let them know, this is what your paycheck says, but this is what you're really getting. And it helps because it makes them understand, because there's been a lot of wide-eyes that I've seen that it's like, wow, I never realized that.
And I do think, though, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the Evergreen study, one of the things it did tell us 2 years ago was that overall Spotsylvania County's benefits were competitive to where we had been compared to. That there were some areas they were a little better than we might have been, but in another area the county was a little better. So overall, our benefits in Spotsy, at least from what Evergreen had said, if I remembered it correctly, actually said at that time our benefits were pretty comparable. So if you're dealing with comparable benefits, then, and there's a lack of compensation, then, I mean, they're getting those comparable benefits and a higher salary to go somewhere else, so.
And they're not getting a 1099 on those benefits.
Are there any other questions?
Just a
from-
comment, and, you know, this is a very logical thing to do, and I think that we'll see some movement on this because it's a no-brainer, really. But I would just suggest, and this wouldn't maybe even be to you two, but immediately start keeping data on all this. And once you run the data on how much you're able to save once we get some of these things implemented, and the numbers don't lie, it's not opinion anymore, it's going to be fact. I think it'll not only serve to continue to make adjustments in the compression and sort of even things out and encourage people to come here. I think our benefits packages are competitive. That's not your problem. I think exactly what y'all said. The young ones are fine for a while, but the minute you start having a family, it gets very hard to look at how am I going to pay for all this and pay my mortgage and make sure they go to college. I think the minute we get some things changed on this, which I feel it's going that way, we need to get data immediately and start keeping it and see how much we saved, how much it's working, because I think this is going to be pretty significant. I think it's going to be advantageous, significant. I think the money looks a little scary right now just to pay for it all up front, but I think you'll see the return pretty quickly.
Well, and to follow what you said, ma'am, was it's hard to put a number on experience. But would you rather have a firefighter with 5 years experience fighting your fire, or would you fighting your house fire, or treating someone that's been hurt in an accident, and a 5-year deputy that's trying to find a crime, solve a crime that was committed to you, or a one-year veteran? I mean, you can't put a number on that.
If y'all, I know you will remember, both of you will, and a lot of you will up here. Remember the supervisors used to do a survey for the county? They quit years and years ago, but they did it for years. Every time you came back strong, education, fire, safety. This is what people are worried. If you talk to citizens in their community, I don't care who you are, how little they know about local government, how much they know. If they're as well versed as the people up here or someone who doesn't even turn on the TV when it comes on, they will say they want good schools, good fire, good protection, good safety, fire rescue, and schools. They want a good community to live in. So this definitely is a very important conversation to have, and I hope I see some progress in this.
Thank you all for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you. If there aren't any other questions, again, we really appreciate your time. You brought some additional clarity to this, and I think it's something, again, that we'll continue to talk about and see where it goes. So I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Under new business, we were going to continue a discussion between the county and school fiscal year 2020 budget recommendations. And Mr. Davis, I know you were chairing the meeting last time, and also came in on the back end a little bit. But also looking at some of the notes, I know there were a few questions from some committee members. And at this point, I know we have Ms. Shelley, who's here, our school liaison. So if there are questions that the committee has or would like to have a discussion about, Ms. Shelley, are you open to answering any questions? I don't know if the committee has questions.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, and yes, Mr. Davis just asked a question. Were there questions sent ahead of time? I sent out an email. I didn't get any questions specifically for the school's 2020 budget recommendations. I did have one from Mr. Briner regarding the public safety, just FYI.
And that was my, what I was going to say is I did watch the replay of your meeting, and I know you had said anyone who had questions to get them to you. And since I didn't hear from you, I'm guessing there were no questions. So I'm prepared to maybe answer a few, but because I have not been able to talk to our staff, I am not really completely prepared to answer questions this
Understandable.
evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So are there any?
I did, it was a late email to Greg, and I acknowledge that fact. It was not to him by the deadline. But I had sent an email, and it wasn't so much for public safety, so I'm sorry if there was a confusion. But at the last meeting, I'd brought up an inquiry about the across-the-board pay increases that the schools are proposing and why they hadn't looked at implementing post-Evergreen study, a similar setup like the county had, where it wasn't across the boards, but there were various percentages given for longevity to help with compression, and why there wasn't, the schools weren't looking to maybe decompress first before they started giving across-the-board raises. And I was just sort of wondering why the school system decided to go that way.
Last year, the reason we started doing that was because to implement the Evergreen study, especially for our teachers, it would have been significantly more money to have fully implemented the Evergreen study, to put people to midpoint and to make the compression. So that is why we did and then last year, going with the across the board, because it was going to be 4% for teachers, 2% for everybody else. But because of the increase of insurance last year, the division, the school board went ahead and said, let's give everyone except our administrators that 4% to do away with, to help out with that increase of insurance that was coming across. And the reason for the increase of insurance was also to save the county, to save about $1.3 million, I believe. This year, 5% increase is for the SOQ positions, which is a state initiative through the governor. The governor has in his budget, and it looks like it is in both the House and the Senate version, to increase all SOQ positions by 5%. So that is where this 5% is in our budget now. But every position is not SOQ, but that would not be a really great thing that our bus drivers don't get it because they're not necessarily SOQ positions. So across the board. I hope that answered your question.
And Ms. Shelley, because it is from the governor's and it's matching, it still is saving the county money because the 4% would have been completely coming from the county, whereas now it's just 2.5%, right?
It is a smaller amount coming from the county because there is a required match. I do not, from my understanding, if I remember correctly, there was about a $4.6 million county match for to implement the 5% pay increase. That is from the governor's budget.
I had a question. The state and federal funds from the general operating fund, it states in the county budget plan of $160 million. However, the school budget plan shows $166 million. Is that a part of the gap?
I don't know what you're referring to, so if you don't mind getting that question to me, then I can share it with our staff, because I do not know what you're referring to.
Are there any more questions from anyone? I know Catherine has stepped out, but are there any more questions from this committee?
I don't have any for Ms. Shelley, but I do have some on the county's budget.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Sorrell, thank you for being here on your day off.
Yes, thank you, Mary. I was looking through here and I saw several quite healthy increases, especially for executive services, which are up 2.4 million for non-departmental. Do we know what that is?
Non-departmental is where we would track things like the health insurance increase, which is across all counties, across all departments, but until such time as it's actually finalized, the numbers, it's plugged in there. And so that I can get those details of you, but that's not specific to that non-departmental division. Those are a holding spot for some of those things that will then be spread across departments.
So the county is looking at covering the increase for county employees of insurance?
No, we anticipate an increase in our health insurance this year. There is an estimate plugged into this budget for the county share of that to be $750,000, but employees would also see a share that would be taken directly from the employee. So that would just be the county share of that piece of it.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what the rest of that 2.4 million is.
I can give you those numbers, yeah.
And then public safety, is that 2 million, is that all for employees?
Which 2 million are you referring to? Give me a page or
Yeah.
grab my other document here.
Page 71?
Before you go on, did you say
I said in the executive services section. Yeah, that's page 67.
71, which piece are you looking at? I'm sorry.
I was looking at the net tax support alone was like $2 million. It was up almost
Right.
2 million.
So, the net tax support is the net after we increase the revenues that are associated specifically with the department. So the revenues are just up a tad bit, but the budget is up to, almost that whole 2 million is in the budget. And you can see, if you break down by sheriff, fire rescue, regional detention, both the jail and juvenile center, our share of both of those is going up this year. That's over 500,000 of that increase right there. And then the building division, which is a small piece of it. So the rest of it would be the salary increases. So the salary increases would be embedded into the fire department and the sheriff's, and obviously they are two of our larger departments. So
Also on slide 6, page 3 of this handout, 821,000 of that is because we We have the full year for a bunch of positions. 243,000 for the 4 SROs. Full year for 10 firefighter medics that they may have added at mid-year or sometime during the year, but they weren't in the full year. And if you look on this other page, the next page, there's an adjustment to the fire and rescue, the overtime. So I think that would all go down there too.
On specifics on the non-departmental section, along with the $750,000 placeholder for health insurance, we also have the placeholder for the county's second part of the OPEB. We are increasing our annual contributions into our OPEB fund, and that is also a placeholder held into that particular department versus across all departments.
And I don't know if you can answer this one, but I was struck by something some of the supervisors said last week. I noticed the school's budget is $300,000 less, but they kept saying that they knew a salary increase was coming again this year, and they knew the schools were going to request some positions. Why would the schools get $300,000 less when the county knew these things were upcoming? That didn't make any sense to me.
Part of the less is because part of what we gave them last year was a $250,000 increase, which was one-time funding. So that would not come every year because it was given specifically for a one-time purpose. So that would go down this year. So that's part of your
Well, that's
difference
part of
there.
it, but then, the state gave us more money, almost $900,000, and the county took that away.
Well, and,
So we
and
weren't
in our
able to-
calculations, we too have been following the state budget. We are required to match, which we do, more than match the anything that the state requires us to match. It was our understanding based on the governor's budget, and I believe it's a little different in the Senate and the House, but it's all relatively the same, but they all have their own little wording intricacies. And I was looking up an email that I got yesterday, but I don't have it with me. But bottom line is the governor's budget says we can get that match or that share of that SOQ funding if we give 5% over 2 years, over the biennium, 19 and 20. We do not have to give another 5% in fiscal year 20 to get that funding. And so we assumed, because they did the 4% last year, that this year would be relatively close to the same thing they did last year. And that would be, we're going to get $6 million more from the state because of that, so that would cover the amount of money that they needed for fiscal year 20.
But that really wouldn't cover it, because if you're giving another 4% to cover the Evergreen study, what they're doing, the hybrid plan, and that's 4.6 million, plus the state's requiring more counselors and social workers.
Yeah, we did not factor any new positions in because we would not know that
Well,
level. But specifically
then-
looking at the salary increase is all I'm referring to.
But then also last year, they had made Dr. Baker, the positions he had asked for last year, they made him divide over 3 years. So that still would have been more positions.
Yeah, he presented three years of positions, 60 last year and I think 30 in the next 2, if I recall. But what we got this year was 148. So position counts changed. And so we looked solely at what we thought was going to happen from the raise. We knew that we could get that $6 million in new revenue from the state if it's 5% over 2 years, we gave most of the employees 4% last year. Some of them got 2%. So another 1% this year. We knew if you were going to do 4%, you're definitely going to cover that 5% for the 2 year. So you're going to get that amount. And that's where our thinking came, Dawn, to be honest with you. So we knew the $6 million in state revenue was going to be coming in, and it would cover the school share of the salaries. We did not know specifically what positions he was going to come back with this year.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, needs change.
Absolutely. And it happens year to year.
Yeah.
We had the same issue on our side. As Catherine has pointed out multiple times, a good chunk of what came out of any new revenue we had this year is all the positions that got added after the 19 budget was adopted last year. All
Right.
the additional firefighters that got added, we added all the SROs. All those things had to be funded in 20. So a lot of that money, new money came right off the bat with things that were already decided last year.
It just seems like schools are always told either remain steady or we're giving you less, and everybody else gets to go up.
And
So
I can't answer that. I hear you. I know that it's a tough job that the school board and the county board have to do. I don't think anybody disagrees with anything that was said tonight on the
Oh,
public
not
safety.
even a little bit.
And I believe that if you polled the teachers, they'd say, well, we're the same thing. You know, we work, we have education, you know, we need to be paid. The issue comes in funding it and how it's going to be funded. And I don't, you know, we've been challenged to look at what Jay has been presented. We'll be doing that soon, but it will be extremely costly
Yeah.
to do that and to continue it. There's no, you know, he mentioned the first year, which he's absolutely right, but then after that, if you're going to continue to do a step every year, then you're going to, right now, the COLA, and as Tim pointed out, would be under either scenario. You're going to have a COLA whether you're in the current county proposal or in what they're proposing there. But now what this is proposing is a larger step every year. Right now, on the county side, we're given those longevity marks at 3, 5, 10, 12, and 15 years, and they're either 1% or 0.5%. So at 5 markers, you get no more than 1%. If we give a true step, then we give a step at every single step on that scale, which is 25 or 30 steps at 2.5 times what we're doing now. I mean, it's significant. There's no way it won't be costly.
Yeah, the schools haven't
I'm not
gotten
saying I'm against it. I'm
No,
just
no.
saying it's going to have a
But
cost.
this,
Yeah.
and the schools haven't gotten steps in.
Absolutely.
I've been teaching 12 years and I've had
Absolutely.
1, maybe 2. I think my first year I got 1, and then another time. And the rest of the time it's been 1% COLAs, 1.5%, 2%, which, you know, we're grateful when we got them, but
They don't move you up the scale.
we
so-
also lose, you know, employees. Anybody who's 0 to 5 years, we'll lose 50 to 75% of them, I think. At least 50% of them.
We're getting ready to hit, I know Jay hit on it, but we're getting ready in the county to hit a bubble of retirements.
Mm-hmm.
They've been talking about it for about 10 years now, where we're ready to hit it. There's
Yep.
quite a few people who have earned the time to retire, so we're going to go through that bubble, and then we're going to settle back down again. But, you know, I've been hearing the public safety side and the same thing on our side for years. They're right. The young people come in, they say they don't care about health insurance, they don't care about retirement, then they get.
They want the money.
But, you know, and so we have to balance that. We have good benefits, which years ago, it was the benefits that drew people here. Now, it seems to be the salary. I'm not sure how we balance that. We need to find the place that provides the employee with a fair salary, fair benefits, but is enough to keep them from going up the road, because we will forever be competing with up the road. That is
Oh, yeah.
never going to change.
A friend of mine, she has 3 years experience.
Yeah.
She went up the road this year. She makes more than I do.
And the problem, though, is our citizens live here, and they pay the taxes. And so we can't pay up-the-road salaries for citizens that are paying current tax rates here. So it's a balance, and I'm not sure what the answer is.
Well, a lot of my friends are citizens here and still go up the road.
Right.
So Dawn, I
So-
just,
Most of my, yeah.
I
Yeah.
know Tim has a question. I think Catherine, you had a question. I'd like to make a comment
well,
after that.
I want to sort of and again, I want to reiterate, you know, a couple weeks ago when I was talking about the across-the-board pay increases, I think I went on record then to say, I think the teachers need to be fairly compensated.
I think
My-
the employees need to be
Right,
fairly
I think,
compensated.
okay, I think you're correct. The employees need to be fairly compensated.
Yes.
All I'm saying is, like I said 2 weeks ago, whatever gets implemented, across-the-board pay raises do nothing to create the structure to decompress employees. You're moving everybody up, but you're not addressing exactly what you've talked about, which is your lack of steps. So I guess that's where I'm just trying to wrap my head around, is why we keep doing these across-the-board 4% and 5% increases. And I understand there's some to offset for health insurance and all that. Why we're not delegating those resources and putting them into the school's budget in a way to decompress and get people where they need to be on the steps before we start going across and doing across-the-board raises.
If I remember correctly, it would have cost $12 to $18 million to decompress it.
Right. Well,
And that's,
Evergreen.
Right.
Evergreen was
According to Evergreen.
$7 million.
$7 million.
yeah, but let's be fair. When Evergreen did the estimate for the county, 1 point whatever it was nowhere near what it was going to cost to decompress the county. So I think what people need to realize here too, though, is, you know, that's the issue. That's what we need to tackle. But we can't institute it in 1 year. I mean, the county, even with the Evergreen study with the lowballed estimated costs that they had then when they were just giving you in tenure and grade. It was still a 3-year implementation for that program. I don't know if, I wouldn't be surprised even if we went to the STEP program that there may be an implementation part to that, but doing across the board stuff doesn't address, you've got to build the foundation and build from there. And by just throwing money and putting across the board percentages and stuff doesn't build the foundation to create that spread. I think that's what needs to be done first. And then you can start doing across the board stuff. Because I can tell you, Mary spoke on it, and they were talking about these longevity percentages with the county. Those are if you physically hit that year mark with the county that specific year, not if you've been with the county that long. So for people like myself, I'm getting the CPI this year. That is it. I'm not getting any type of longevity percentages because I've been with the county 19 years this July. I haven't been with the county for 3. I haven't been with the county for 12. I haven't been with the county for 5, 10, or 15. I've been with 19. But all I'm getting is the CPI. So, but having said that, that's because what they've started to do over the last couple of years is try to at least start decompressing those pay ranges and then building on that. And I'd like to see the foundation, but that's just me. Sorry.
No, you're fine, thank you.
Well, the school employees need the increase. They do, and everybody needs it. Our custodians, our paras who make less than $20,000 a year, our bus drivers that make 10-something an hour, our new custodians that make $10 an hour. They all,
Like 18-something an hour.
well, not to start.
Yes, you do. It's in your.
Ms. Shelley, did you have a
I was just going
comment?
to add in about the Evergreen study. There is also something in our budget about, so we have the states mandated the 5%, but it also goes with what we had put in our Evergreen. But there's also another part of the Evergreen that is in our budget for the decompression. But I do want to mention about the decompression. If we look at every locality in Virginia will probably be giving their SOQ positions, if not their entire staff, due to the governors and our General Assembly's budget, 5%, does that mean that we are going to be compressed again? Because we're not meeting the compression because everybody's getting the same thing. So therefore, we're still not that, the county not maybe giving us the extra, give that extra money, then are they fully funding the Evergreen study that they had asked us to do? So that's just something else that is just in the back of my head, thinking that, everybody's getting it. The county said they would pay for the Evergreen study, but now this is not really included because this is a state mandate. So that's just something else I just think you need to be less thinking about. That's all. Thank you.
Yes.
No, those were all mine, thanks.
When Mr. Braswell gave the presentation, he and Mrs. Gaines and Dr. Meyer, the figure they gave on Evergreen this year was $500,000. That's in the school's presentation. And I remember Mr. Skinner, he keeps bringing up, what about steps? What about steps? And Mrs. Gaines, the school chief financial officer, and I think this probably since I've been on the CBRC, because I was a teacher, I like my steps too. She said the employees did better with the percentage, and she said that in that meeting when Mr. Skinner asked her. There were times when you get a step plus a certain percent, so at least you were satisfying your compression. But I think you can find all of that on tape. And I mean, I know he asked her last year and he also asked her this year. And it was more, because some of the steps weren't as much as the 2% or whatever the percentage is.
Yes.
And the starting pay for a bus driver in Spotsylvania County is $18 and change per hour, which it is in Stafford County. It's less than that in Prince William, believe it or not. Huh? I know, we
I
should
said,
all
I know
think-
what I'm doing when I retire.
Absolutely. Well, I think being treated with respect from the students and the parents would go a long way. Those bus drivers have, as we know, those of us that have worked in schools, it's not the same as it was 5 years or 10 years ago. But those bus drivers have, what, 77 kids or something on there? I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just wanted to put that out, that it is in the school's budget,
Yeah.
and it is 500,000.
What that is for, though, is for those positions that actually were getting brought up to the midpoint. It doesn't count the 4% hybrid plan. It's just the percentage of people who were being brought up to the midpoint.
Right.
And that's why they've made it two different things, the
But
salary increase
The Board
and
of
the evergreen.
Supervisors never agreed to 3 years of a 4% hybrid plan.
Yes, they did. They did last
No,
year.
they didn't. They do 1 year, you approve one budget at a time.
So,
Well, even
So-
Paul Trampy the other night said, we agreed to pay for the evergreen.
Sure.
We should cover that. And they knew last year that it was a 3-year plan to bring that, for that 4%, and it was a hybrid plan with the agreement of evergreen that this was the best way for us to go. So they know that 4%
They may
is
have
part
known,
of.
but they can only approve one budget at a time.
Well, yes, but they've approved, if they approve this one, they'll have approved all 3 years for county employees. Why not the school employees?
It's a
Why
big
would
difference.
Why would school employees not get it? They made us do the survey, the evergreen study.
There was
Why did
nothing
then-
in the survey that said $21 million.
Where are you getting 21 million from?
Because they had 3 options. The highest one was to bring everybody up the first year, and it was $7 million. But I hope we give, everybody deserves an increase. I just want it to be equal.
Well, that's.
I mean, a guy who's mowing the grass out here in front of the Holbrook building deserves the same increase as the guy that's mowing the grass in front of Chancellor Elementary.
So to close this and kind of bring this back around, and I appreciate everyone for their input in the discussion, about this. And usually, I am, forgive me if I digress a little bit, but this is something I think we're all passionate about, and I'd just like to say, as probably one of the fewer people on this committee that was not just born and raised in this county, but educated by the school system. Family's been here since the early 1900s, so there's a lot of family members that's been educated by the school system, and so, again, myself included, who's been able to kind of carve out a halfway decent life for himself. And I will attribute a lot of that to having a good family, but also having a good education. And I can remember teachers spending extra time with me. I can remember having custodians drive me home after school when I was staying back in elementary school to get extra work. So they work hard, and they've always done that. And they deserve everything that they should get. And fair and balanced, yes. So I just wanted to kind of say that. And that's just something that was on my mind. I'm hearing people kind of talk about that. It just kind of made me reflect about my education here in this county. So for whatever that's worth or isn't worth, that's my 2 cents on that piece. But, I wanted to kind of wrap this up. And also, if there are other questions as it relates to the discussion about the county and school budget, we can have those. I know we are up against a hard and fast deadline as it relates to March 12th. I would like to have some discussion. I think our next CBRC meeting is March 4th. We haven't decided on one, so let me take that back. I know Ms. Blaylock, and I don't know if anybody else was not going to be available for the meeting in February that Ms. Harrell had kind of sent out about available dates that we could meet. Given that we are fast approaching March 12th, I think March 4th and 7th are two of the dates that I think everyone could be here. And based on the email responses that I got, that seemed as though everyone was open to maybe having one in March. I know that, and Catherine, this is something that you and you were talking about earlier prior to the meeting discussion. I mean, starting that, you know, that does push our timeline up, you know, a little bit more, given what we have to the county administrator, so he can approve it, our presentation, and then the meeting on the 12th. But just given the importance of it, I would like, if all possible, to have everyone here. So if we can maybe have a quick discussion about the dates and kind of go from there. Sure.
I'd like to draw the committee members' attention. I don't know how many of you had a chance to go through or watch the county budget or watch the Board of Supervisors meeting. But one of the points of contention amongst the members was a $200,000 donation to the YMCA to build racquetball courts. I think as long as our schools and our other departments are in need of money, I mean, I would like, I think, Greg, you should probably poll the CBRC members as to whether we want to recommend that they go ahead and do that. I mean, I was trying to look at places where we could pull money, you know, to help close that gap. So I don't know if any of you were aware of that or not.
Do you know what page that is?
I'm not sure it's on that. I didn't really use this much. I use page 22. Okay. Is that one-time money from FY19 fund balance? But we could give that to the schools as one-time money. Well.
So salaries or
Yeah,
anything like
yeah,
that?
I realize that. They had 3.9 given to them for one-time money for their carryover this year. How much was their carryover? Okay, but it's still one-time only. They can't use it for recurring, right?
Yes, one-time money can only be used for one thing, and the earlier, for that one purpose, and earlier when Dawn and I were talking about the reduction in school, it's because last year we gave them $250,000 one-time money for a one-time purpose. So it would not be used for anything ongoing such as salaries, benefits, positions, anything like that. Carryover is different. Carryover is what they did not expend before that year was completed. Most of the time, that money is going into the next year for things that will occur and be completed in the next year. Books or I can't remember the carryover stuff. There was a lot of it this year, but it's not it's what was left over last year that is rolled over to the next year for specific purposes.
Well, I'm just saying that could be given to the schools just as easy as it's given to the YMCA.
If they have a one-time use for it, yes. We try not to give one-time money without a specific one-time use.
Well, I'm sure they can always use classroom
Because otherwise you're just digging
supplies.
yourself in a hole. If you give someone one-time money and they use it on an ongoing expense,
Right.
then the next year they're going to come back and say, I need that money again because the expense is still ongoing. And so we try to be very careful to only use one-time money for one-time items.
Okay, because I noticed last year, out of the carryover, the $500,000 tuition assistance that the schools were able to offer their employees. This year, it's put into the ongoing budget
In fiscal year 20?
in their proposed budget.
So they started it in 19 with the carryover money. I'm
They
assuming.
started it
Right.
in They started
The
it,
carryover money got used.
yes, I think it was given to them in November. Ms. Shelley, do you know how much of that money's been used, or were you all told how much has been used yet? I mean, is 500,000, well, I know, but I'm wondering how much of the money you got last November has been accessed?
It is being, our employees are now, we made a policy. We updated the policy for the reimbursement, and we are starting to see people ask for or put in for that reimbursement. I do not have the data. I've not asked for that data at this point in time. That is something that I can check in, but I do know that we have had staff request the reimbursement. It is not tuition assistance, it's reimbursement. I think there's a little difference there.
Can you, is there a cap on the amount of reimbursement per employee?
There is, it's in the policy.
Okay, and that's
but
fine.
I don't know what, I don't remember it off the top of my head. It's a regulation.
And I noticed you did it to all employees regardless of their job classification.
It's tuition reimbursement.
Now, okay, and I'm not saying it was right in the division I was in. It was restricted to licensed, certified personnel.
I don't remember exactly what is in the, is
Okay.
in the regulation and the policy.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley. Well, I mean, that would the committee like to have a discussion about the YMCA one-time funds? It's something that I'm just looking at, so I'd like to.
I was going to say, I would need time.
I-
I actually have not yet had time to go back and view the Board of Supervisors. I was traveling, so I don't have time, I had the time to watch it yet. I don't really know I could speak to it accurately. I didn't hear the back and forth, and I'd like to hear, the rationale, their argument, who was for, who was against. Sort of want to break that down and see it first. So if I could just come back at our March meeting, I'd be glad to do my homework.
Same here.
Yeah.
Well,
To-
the bottom line and the presentation that Mr. Taylor gave is that we are starting off 1.3 million in the hole. Now, they feel that'll resolve over time, with revenues. But because so many of these positions, or at least this is kind of what I surmise, Mary, you can correct me if I'm wrong, so many of these positions we're now funding that were previously grant funded or half-year funded. I mean, that's why we don't have, why we're starting out somewhat that way. But they also talked a lot about different road projects that they were going to be doing with cash. And my understanding was we don't have bond referendum authority to borrow. I mean, like the roundabout in Andorra Drive.
We have bond referendum authority for many of the transportation projects. I'd have to go back and look at the exact list. We have not used all the transportation money, but the authority that the citizens give us through a bond referendum is just the authority to borrow the money. Once you borrow it, you got to pay the debt, and that's part of the new money we gave to the schools this year was the money for their debt service. We have new debt service on our side, so it's not just the law says we have to have authority, bond referendum authority, but once we do it, we also have to be able to put it into a budget and afford to pay the debt, which is typically a 20 or 25-year debt, 30 maybe for a road. And I believe we will be having additional bond referendum questions, and won't be this year, but in the next year, because we're soon running out of school money. But that's typical. You go to the citizens, you say these are the things we would like to do. If you'll recall the last referendum, not all the questions passed. We had some questions for some general projects. I believe some of them were landfill projects, which we have to do. We don't have any choice. We have to keep the landfill. So just because the citizens told us that we couldn't borrow money for it, doesn't mean we don't have to do it. We just have to find the cash to do it. And so it's all truly like a puzzle that we have to put together. The 1.3 that you're referring to, the shortfall, that is the estimate right now of our fund balance. We don't have tell people all the time, we don't have an account called fund balance where the money sits and waits. The fund balance is an estimate that takes place over time throughout the year. We estimate when we start the fiscal year where we're going to end the fiscal year. And anything that any revenues that exceed our revenue projections, any expenditure or are short, it can go either way, any expenditures that exceed what we estimate or are short, the net of all those falls to the fund balance. After we fund all of the fund balance requirements, we have a fiscal stability reserve, we have a health insurance reserve, the schools have a health insurance reserve, we have a budget stabilization reserve, we have an economic development reserve. Right now, we estimate, after we fund all those things, that it could be $1.3 million short. But we are transferring $5 million of our fund balance under this proposed budget to the capital projects to pay cash. If we ended up being $1.3 million short, we would not transfer $1.3 million to the capital projects. We would use that money instead to make sure the fund balance is whole. We will not adopt a budget that has a shortfall in it, projected shortfall. The thing that we told the board is that we have to do our mid-year reports. Once we do that, we will have a better look. We've already looked at the revenues, and the mid-year revenue projections are included in the fiscal year 20 budget, but we need to look closer at the expenditures. We're having an issue with fire overtime, significant issue with overtime on the fire side. They were able to offer that ALS coverage, but their projections were off and how much it was going to cost, which is another reason that the county administrator wants us to look closely at this compensation thing. Estimates are just that, but they take quite a few eyes to figure out. We're looking at some potential issues there that we're going to have to cover. And if we have to cover those overtime issues, we pay the money for the protection, then we're going to have to cover the cost, and it would potentially draw down on that fund balance. So once we get those expenditures looked at, which we'll be doing in the next month or so, we'll know better before the budget is adopted, but the budget will not be adopted projecting a shortfall in the fund balance. And that's what I told the board that night when they asked about it. So,
Can I ask you a question then? Mr. Yakubowski sometimes talks about how projects move ahead of the ones that were on, I thought he said the referendum.
he might have been talking about the transportation plan with VDOT.
Oh,
We
is
have a
it VDOT?
transportation committee. We also have the transportation plan. VDOT has to approve things. There are multiple steps, Catherine. If you can,
I think these were capital projects.
they're all capital. Anything,
But
any
everything
road
of
projects are
that,
capital
okay.
projects, yes. And we know
Because
one
he
of the
gets
key
aggravated when they move ahead of the ones that he said, or, he seems aggravated when that they move ahead of the ones that they have bond authority for.
We have, like I said, the first, many years ago, I'm trying to think back the date, the first bond referendum that we did that actually had transportation projects in it. I believe it was $170 million with transportation projects. We all said, staff, what are we going to do? If that gets approved, there's no way we can afford $170 million worth of projects. But the citizens approved it. We did not spend $170 million. That particular referendum, I believe, had an estimate of 22 pennies on the tax rate that it would cost to do all the projects in transportation, school, parks and rec. I think we added 3 pennies over the years. We did not do all the projects. Just because you have authority through a referendum doesn't mean that you're going to actually use it. And as far as the transportation projects are concerned, VDOT has to approve things. We have a transportation committee. There are 5-year plans. I'm not the transportation expert person, so I may be misnaming some of these things, but there are a lot of steps that go through, and I think Mr. Yakubowski's concern is following through that and making sure that they're done in the right order. Yeah.
Can you speak to the 11 million in implementation of corridor findings?
I don't. We have 2 corridor studies that were done, Route 1 and 17 maybe, I can't remember the other corridor study, but so once those studies are done, they will cost out the cost to fix those, and that's the estimated money.
Okay, yeah, right, that was in the out years.
Yeah, those are
okay.
estimated funds.
Okay.
The CIP is in the back of the document. It is a 5-year plan, and in 5 years, a lot of things can change. So just because something is in the first year, or the second, or the third, or the fourth, doesn't mean by the time we get to the 4th year, it's going to be in the first year. You'll see if you go back and compare them, they do change. Mr. Cullinan, the chief, mentioned Shady Grove Fire Station rising to the top. It's not even in the CIP. There's another station in the CIP. So things change. That's what a plan is. And so, and with those transportation projects, again, it all comes down to being able to afford it. Because even if we have authority to borrow the money, we have to be able to pay the debt, the principal and interest on it, every year.
Mary, I did find one more question. I'm looking at the projected enrollments for the schools. And from the looks of it, in a few years, we're going to be 1,500 students over capacity, spread out throughout all divisions. I'm just looking at RE alone. There's no way we're going to fit 824 kids in that school. We barely fit in 500 and some.
Good school. It's my daughter went there.
I greatly.
It's very nice.
I love it.
All 17 are fabulous schools.
All of them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's a great environment. It's very old. It's 70-odd years old.
I will say,
But-
Don, the question of student population growth, that was a question our board has asked for more explanation. I think that's going to be discussed more in detail at the joint work session.
Yeah, because I'm looking at this and 100, page 100. I mean, with our high schools, I mean, Massapona's 1,000 over capacity. Redistricting might shuffle kids around, but I can't see how it's really, if it's 1,500 over total capacity in the county.
And that's one question we have as far as CIP. I believe, Dawn, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's only one school, and that's a renovation in the 5-year plan, right? The renovation to Spotsylvania Middle School? Yeah.
It's Cortland, right?
Portland's being finished, but then the 5-year out, I think it's Spotsylvania Middle. maybe?
Spotsy Middle is in the 5-year out, but there's not enough bond money where we will, if, with the bond that was approved a few years ago, that money will be running out due to the Cortland renovation in, I think, 2 years. I could be wrong.
I think it won't be this election, but I think it'll be 20.
So there will be a need because, I mean, that's our maintenance. That's all of capital improvement. So roofs, air conditioners, HVAC, flooring, anything that the schools would need, all would come from that bond referendum anyway. So it is not just the building, which also is included in that, but we will continue to need those services for our schools to keep them up to date, to keep them safe. I mean, we don't want students sitting in a class in a school that has a leaky roof or that the HVAC doesn't work. So we need to continue to implement those types of maintenance, but also that is what comes from a bond referendum.
So so if we have to build another school or say add on or level and redo RE, poor RE, or even build on,
Any of that
Is that
would
where it
have to
comes
come
from?
from a CIP, which would, to get that money, it would come from a bond.
And I can just interject. I know a little bit about this. It'll change. It's fluid. I was sitting there looking at Elementary 18 on a document. I looked at it, Regional Autism Center. I went down to the blueprint. I could have told you where it was going to be, what it was going to look like, and just like that, it came out from under us in 2008. It was taken away instantaneously when the recession hit. So with a strategic plan being a fluid document, and the school division really is fluid on that document, you'll see this change. They'll have to put another build. If those projections, but they'll have to wait. But if they stay where they are, they'll build again. I mean, just like we had the future plan for 15 years out, and that whole future looks different. So they'll do the same thing as we grow. It'll change as we grow. So when you say 5 years, I think it's sounding final, but they can definitely change it by next year.
We change it from every year. That's why it is updated every year. And there are some things in the out years, and that's one of the things with proffers is there are things in the out years that may not be looked at because they're in the out years. So that is definitely something.
these are scary figures.
They are, Dawn, and that's why I think.
They are.
Ms. Shelley, I'm sorry, Ms. Dennis has a question before you sit down. I don't want you to have to come back up.
I was just going to say they are, and that's why our board, and we've been talking with the school staff too. There's the salary increases are important. They are ongoing increases. We have been fortunate. The buildings that we have had to build in the last 10 years, from 2008, before the when Mr. Blaylock's speaking, those times before 2008, there was a middle school, an elementary school, and a high school in almost every 5-year CIP. Sometimes there were 2 elementary schools. Back then, elementaries were 30 or 40,000, middle schools were 50, and I think high
Yes.
schools were 80. I mean,
That's
we
when
won't-
I started, yeah.
We won't even, it'll be, those numbers will be huge. I mean, when we start putting a single project in the CIP that has a $60,000, $70,000, $100,000 price tag on it, that's just to build it. That's not talking about a new school that has to have teachers, staff in it too. Those costs are significant, so those projections are important to us. We want to know what's going to happen, when they're going to hit the scale, because we need to look out in the future. We have a 5-year plan in here trying to figure out where things are going to be, because the last thing we want to do is make a bunch of decisions today that we can't afford because we have other things that we have to do 3 and 4.
Miss Shelley, Mr. Benton brought up at the meeting about, and this may be your school, Miss Snapper, about the nurses having to help the children that were, just on crutches or whatever, up the stairs. I mean, why isn't that, is it your school?
It is.
Do you have,
It is my school.
do you
My
have an
school was built-
elevator in your school?
No. My school was built in 1952.
Well, it still
opened
needs
in
to be
1952.
ADA compliant, which I guess, if you haven't done any renovation to it.
We
But-
did in the 1970s, and I
But
don't know when ADA started.
that should be a priority over turf fields, $980,000 football turf fields. I mean, that's dangerous, not only to the students, but it's dangerous to the staff. I mean, I can imagine, a fire drill happens and a kid's on the second floor.
A fire drill happens, a student is not allowed to use an elevator, even
Right.
if there is an
I
elevator.
realize that, but what we had in ours, we installed those kind of like they do for elderly people that lift a chair.
I have worked in many buildings in different divisions, and I've never seen a lift chair in a school, but that is something that
We had them
can-
in Stafford because I had one in my school.
Okay. But I've not seen them, and I've worked in many divisions and with stairs, and I've never seen one of those lift chairs. So, that is something I can mention.
Well, that was
but-
the insinuation I got, was it wasn't just a fire drill, it was helping them up to their classroom or helping them down. I just think that it's putting the child and staff.
Well, she doesn't
And
carry
danger.
them. What she does is she holds their backpack and she holds their
Okay, he said
crutches.
carry.
Oh, no.
No,
She
no,
does
no
not
one is
carry them. She
carrying
does not
them.
carry.
Okay.
She
They're
carries their
helping
crutches and
them.
she carries their backpack.
And there's something called a lap band that also helps students
Okay.
for getting up and down stairs if that is necessary. I know we use them with our students with disabilities that are unable when there is.
And what about your staff that work on second floors? I mean, not all staff can do stairs.
You're absolutely right.
But then they
But
can
that is
transfer
also
downstairs.
Something that would be put into the CIP that we can look at as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
I
All
will
right.
say that my own children, when they had broken limbs, and they each had 2 broken legs in middle school, Thornburg, they hated the elevator, so they would walk up and down the stairs. It was just them. That was their preference. They just couldn't stand the elevator.
Seeing everybody, all of them wanted an excuse to ride the elevator.
I know,
whether
and my
they
girls
really
don't.
needed it or not.
In my
Yeah.
building, who have gotten stuck in the elevator where I work. So that happens as well, which is not something that I want to happen in Spotsylvania ever, but that has happened in my building. So, thank you.
So is there any more discussion regarding these issues? If not, I'd like to, and thank you, Catherine. I'd like to move forward with a discussion about May 4th, excuse me.
Did we have May 4th or May 7th? March.
I see, don't listen to me.
We're trying to get to summers, what that was. So,
Yeah, so March 4th I think is the earliest date in March, according, that is,
So all I was going to say is I will work with either of those dates. I am completely in town. I did get an update after I sent the email to you that there is a community function going on that Monday evening. I need to attend. I'll try to do both. If you think we could do it March 7th, that would be great. But who's going to prepare? I mean, what do y'all have to do in between our meeting and presenting? Or is it you and,
so it would be, the crux of that will likely fall to myself and Sean.
'Cause if
Of
you-
course, with everyone's input. So I kind of envision just us communicating via email. And what I would like to do is put together a draft before the 4th.
okay.
So that everyone can look at that, and then we can, on the 4th, we can actually have a discussion around that draft, and then make any edits, changes to that.
So what I'm saying is you think March 7th would be too late? 'Cause
I think
that's
it- I-
preferable. Okay.
Yeah, I think that would be too late because we'd like to get it to
Yeah.
the county administrator by the 8th.
Okay. Yeah, let's do it then the 4th. Just know that I may be in and out, but it's just right here at the Career and Tech Center, and I'll just be, we'll figure
I
it out.
mean, we'll figure it out, and,
Yeah,
and we
that's
can
good.
communicate, via email.
Yeah.
To kind of keep you in the loop. But this is something, I mean, I do think that this committee has done a really good job of working together and to move everything forward, and I would like to continue that. So I want everybody's input, feedback. So whatever it is that I have to do, or Sean and I have to do to make sure that everyone's engaged and involved in the process, we'll do, because I don't want to get to this point and then this be a presentation that Sean and myself primarily just put together. That's not what this committee is about.
Do you want us to try to send you some slides? I mean, that's kind of like I was
Sure.
asking about how do you feel about that YMCA thing? Because in the past, and we may choose to do it totally different now, we could say we don't support that donation, especially with the large gap in the schools.
I mean, I think I want to look at it more so that I can have a formalized opinion, but that doesn't, I don't want that to stop other people who maybe who are ahead of that curve to send their information. So if there's information that you would like to send, or slides, go ahead. I mean, feel free.
Well, I'll just, and I think, Scott, didn't you have some stuff you wanted to ask or comment on?
I mentioned it to Mary
Okay.
earlier.
I just thought, we could do a slide and, or a couple of slides. Like if you see something in the budget that you really want to support or you don't want to support, throw it up on a slide so that we can pass it around and be one way of generating discussion.
Yeah.
Or at least, because we've got a lot of pages to go through. And I know that Karen and I discussed that we think the county should save money by not televising these meetings. And I know Mr. Davis has brought that up before. We're supposed to be about saving money, not spending money.
I want to, maybe. 'Cause
I'll
to
make that slide.
Well, because when we're looking at this, these are great comments. I think when we look at savings or things that we may not agree with, let's put it that way. If we can summarize that into a calm response to help improvement would be the best way. Yeah, they were not always, but I just think that, because under the circumstances, I think there's a way that we can, I'm just trying to figure out how can we lump a lot of savings in there, because we got to find a way to do that, because I'm pretty sure we can find a lot of areas. So reason I'm saying that, just send whatever you want to send to Greg and myself, whether you put it in a slide presentation or bulletized form. Slides would be great, because then we can blend it. And then what we could do is do two type presentations. So one has it all, then we can purge, or we can see what we can purge and kind of get that out. So by the 4th, we can have a generalized draft brief. So what I'm saying, that don't be afraid to put anything in there that you find.
Well, and we shouldn't just be, I mean, we're a budget review committee. We're not supposed to just look to cut. We are representing the citizens. We're citizens. If there's something we want them to fund that they're not funding, we need to say that. Or we think you need to, increase the allocation to maybe utilities, for example, or, whatever. I mean, it's not that we're just supposed to cut.
I think we all agree on that.
Does most of us have Google? Because we could do Google Slides and then share it with everybody, and everybody would have access to it. And that would just,
Either way, doesn't matter. We could do both.
Mr. Chair, the only thing I would just, I totally agree with this. We need to put out our thoughts, and I would just caution what we are. We can't be opinion based. We can't just say, because if we're going to put out slides for that, I can tell you my first one's going to be fully fund the schools and the sheriff and the fire. That'd be my first thing to say. That's my opinion. Nobody cares about my opinion, nor should they. They should care about what we've done research on. So I just say, let's stay with the facts. We've done research on a lot of departments. Let's come back with our findings. Let's come back with where we saw efficiencies. Let's come back where we saw maybe there is a slight area for slight cost savings or large cost savings. And I also think sometimes we're a review committee. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I think a report could also be, after all of the research we've done, we feel like there's a lot of efficiency already going on. It doesn't have to be a negative report, or it doesn't have to be a smoking gun we're looking for. We're trying to find out, are we running as efficiently as possible? Is there a cost savings that maybe has been overlooked that we want to delve further into? Or is there somewhere that maybe need more funding that we're not seeing it working as effectively because of that? This was a perfect example, talking about the sheriff's department and how their hiring goes on, that we might have a cost savings if we made it more effective and efficient to retain officers and firefighters. So I would just caution that we make sure we're not talking too much about what we want. More so what this committee should be doing is what our findings have been, and with some of the things like the YMCA that I'm going to look into, those are things that are on the table. So I think that's a fair one for sure to look at. But that was just a sort of a blanket statement. Anybody can tag team on that, and it's just really reflecting on who are we and what we want to present ourselves as.
I would also like to, for the committee members that haven't started yet, when you're going through the county budget, and I can send everybody a link, they've got a plus and minus per department. It's a little bit easier to read. The amount of money that we're spending on dues and association memberships. Take a look at that. I mean, I've already contacted my supervisor, Mr. McLaughlin, about, I said, the first place y'all need to look in your budget is your Board of Supervisors budget. I mean, they've got $29,149 in dues and memberships, and then education and training. Mary, when you all come up with these numbers, is it based on what was spent before or what they've spent to date? He says that they don't go to the only time they go to education and training is when they're first year board member.
Yeah, but there are other things in there, dues and associations for the county, like I think NACO or VACO or some of the
This
major ones.
is NACO and VACO.
they're
That's what
large.
he told me.
Those are large amounts. There are some, my organization, my department is a member of GFOA and VA GFOA.
Right.
With the staff that I have, if I didn't have those two organizations, I'd have to have another person just to keep up on all the laws and the mandates and things that happen.
Well, see, he
We
doesn't.
have to have
yeah.
those organizations to help us. So-
Well, he doesn't think we need NACO. I mean, 29,000,
And-
but that's
and-
just his opinion.
Absolutely, Catherine, and he
Yeah.
certainly has a right to his opinion. I will say, it's been a year now, but we had the same question from a previous CBRC. We gave
Yes.
a complete list of all dues and associations.
Oh, yeah,
a
Jeremiah
complete-
did that.
Complete explanation of everything, and the training and stuff would be if someone goes to a conference. The sheriff and the fire, I think, will have the two largest budgets for those. They do a lot of training outside of the training they talked about today for new people. I'm talking about their sergeants and the different people going to trainings. There are lots of trainings that occur. I personally think you need to have that happen. I wish my staff could attend more. If we weren't so busy, we could. But, I mean, that's the only way to keep up to date on stuff. But that list is out there. We have done it multiple times. It was a complete and comprehensive list of every single due, association, and training that we attend and why. And I don't
I'm
believe
not
there are any
asking you to
questions.
do a list, but I just wanted to call their attention to that.
Yeah, if you would like to send that link, that'd be fine. And
For this?
yes, and then, every committee member can at least review that at their leisure.
You're gonna have to get,
So so have we agreed on the 4th?
I think we were in agreement.
Okay.
And I'll get here from the Career and Tech Center as soon as possible, but I'll be able to watch the replay and we can do a quick debrief.
So, Mr. Phelps, Mr. Thompson, Ms. Dennis, are we agreed to the 4th? Okay, so, we'll put that in the minutes and send that out and get that scheduled.
And I just want to put it out again, I know we talk about email, and for this is very important. If you have an input, please send it. Send it like yesterday more than the first, second, or third, because we may be able to just get a nice baseline and get it back out, and we can massage it as we need to. Yeah, whatever it is you have.
review of administration, display a lot.
Yeah.
And whatever else you think you have.
That's all we've looked at.
That and, exactly. It's not always apples and apples, and but if there's that information, if we have it, then we can decide to take it out. Or if there's something that we can kind of glean from that information, that'd be great. But if we don't have it, then we don't know. So,
Right, so county admin, Parks and Rec. Planning department.
social services.
Planning department, sorry.
But we did have a conversation and did at least I did, looked into federal programs that could offset things from the general fund that was related to human services. So that'd be,
Ran a big editorial.
Newspaper, though, I'm not
I mean,
okay.
I mean, we didn't look at the. That's changed so much.
So are you saying,
I mean, if you
There's still insight from it.
yeah, there's things that I think we can kind of glean.
Well, we had DSS do a very extensive presentation. I know our chair visited in detail. I mean, it was a lot of work done. We at least need to add that somehow to our
Yes.
presentation, that we did do a lot of research in this area.
And I will add that information.
Yeah, yeah.
I got Greg taking care of social
Yeah.
services. That's all.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.